Hello, and welcome back to the Wild Gardens. I'm your host, Martin Hale. The rendering next to me is of a place, a vision really, of a thing called the Emerald Necklace. I first became aware of the Emerald Necklace when I had a chance meeting with Claire Robinson. After I heard her explanation of what it was, I was surprised. In fact, I was bowled over. I decided then and there I was going to do a show or two about the Emerald Necklace and the vision and the reality. I want to bring along my fellow wild gardeneers to visit these places and see what it is. Before I do though, because it's connected with the history of Southern California and the San Gabriel River area as well, I want to take a short look at the history of the region and bring it up to the present. So let's go look at the history now, and we'll come back to 2013. The story goes that the first people to arrive in the Western Hemisphere migrated across the Bering Straits land bridge 10 to 25,000 years ago. Some of them settled in California and were the ancestors of the tribes that developed here. One of those tribes was the Tongva tribe. They made their homes alongside what is now called the San Gabriel River and its tributaries. They hunted, gathered, and fished for countless decades in relative peace. They built dwellings called quiche that were good-looking designs and perfect for the climate. Descendants of the Tongva tribe are still with us today. In 1769, the Spaniards came. Their purpose? To establish a series of missions up and down the coast of Alta California. By doing this, they would begin the settlement of the most remote part of their North American empire. A priest named Junipero Serra founded the first missions and began a process that resulted in 21 missions from San Diego in the south to Sonoma in the north. Because of their great distance from Mexico, the missions needed to become self-sufficient, and so began California's first agriculture. Largely native labor produced crops of barley, wheat, maize, and fruits of all kinds, including grapes, and also olives. The Tongvas lived nearest Mission San Gabriel. The missions had mixed results as far as the tribes were concerned. The mission system ended around 1834 by Mexican government decree. Large tracts of land were granted by the King of Spain and later by the Mexican government that were called ranchos. The ranchos grew cattle, and the horse was king. A unique way of life developed around these ranchos. They produced hides and tallow, which they traded to Americans, whose ships put in at certain locations along the coast. Everything was done on horseback. Rancho children were on horses at tender ages, and the vaqueros of that day were probably the finest horsemen in the world. It was a gay, carefree era that was short-lived. The Mexican-American War and the Gold Rush put an end to much of it. I often wonder what the land must have looked like when the Spaniards first arrived. Over the years, I've been to various viewpoints around Southern California and tried to imagine that past appearance. It's hard. I remember reading an account of a Spaniard who from his ship at anchor could see carpets of orange flowers from the foothills of the mountains all the way to the sea. What a magnificent sight on a clear, crisp spring day. During the gold rush, California became a state in 1850. Agriculture slowly became the primary industry, and for decades that was the case, and still is. Oil was discovered here in the late 19th century, and another industry was born. Urbanization began to overtake agriculture at a rapid pace in Southern California. In 1929, the LA Chamber of Commerce commissioned Frederick Olmsted and Harlan Bartholomew to draw up plans for a series of parks and open space. Olmsted and Bartholomew envisioned a chain of green space up and down the Los Angeles, Rio Hondo, and San Gabriel rivers. Interestingly, Frederick Olmsted's father is Frederick Olmsted Sr., who is considered to be the father of American landscape architecture. In the 19th century, he had done a similar plan for the city of Boston. Anyway, the Depression came and nothing more was done about the Los Angeles plan. The land of the Tongvas, the missions, the ranchos, and the American farmers became endless miles of housing tracts, shopping malls, and asphalt. Time passed, and along comes Claire Robinson from Points East. Holding degrees in architecture, cultural history, art history, and European studies and urbanism, she had worked on urban projects in the UK and France, and has taught architecture at Harvard and in Canada. She also holds an MBA from UCLA. She became aware of a need to reconnect parts of the Rio Hondo and San Gabriel rivers back to their source in the mountains, and found the Olmsted-Bartholomew plan to be a perfect blueprint. Thus was born the Emerald Necklace. In 2003, she started an organization called Amigos de los Rios, which means Friends of the Rivers, whose purpose is to restore parts of the rivers into green space and parks. Amigos de los Rios is a nonprofit organization that employs architectural graduates and others to carry out its vision. So, with the organization formed, Claire and the staff began to do a survey of the land adjacent to the San Gabriel and Rio Hondo rivers, between the Santa Fe Dam to the north and the Whittier Narrows to the south. Doing a taxonomy on the conditions of the land in these areas, they found that the rivers flowed by schools, a neglected park, railroad crossings, freeways, homes, shopping malls, industrial complexes, and so forth. But there was something else. The rivers also ran by a vacant lot here, a brown field there, and a devastated piece of land somewhere else. Some of the places were tiny plots next to a billboard, while some were quite large. These lands were waiting to be reborn, to have native plants growing on them again, to celebrate the cultures that once existed on them. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we're here today, to witness the beginnings of these transformations. Wild Gardens in East Los Angeles County. Unused land waiting to get a little flavor of that distant, vanished past. The influences that led to the revived Emerald Necklace idea found their beginnings with Claire's mother and a childhood friend and mentor. I got a chance to speak with Claire while in the Azusa Canyon near the northernmost Emerald Necklace site called Gateway Park. This is Claire Robinson. We've been talking about the Emerald Necklace all this time, and finally we get to meet her. Claire is the principal visionary behind this project. I know that you have a mentor that I've talked about. I know that you're taking this from a plan that a man did back in the 1930s, but you're the prime mover behind the 2010, 2008, 2009, 2013 plan, correct?
Well, I think maybe we could call me a weaver.
A weaver, all right.
A magistral weaver, hopefully.
And in doing all of these projects, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, I have to admit to you. What challenges did you have to face in order to bring these things to fruition?
That's a good question. I think in terms of traditional conservation, when we first started talking about the asphalt quilt as a place of very poignant, urgent need to bring nature back for the benefit of children and families, I don't think we really had a lot of audience with more traditional nature stewardship folk. And it turns out that this is probably the most urgent place to do conservation because we're in the urban core. So bringing scientists to our quarter to think about how little gestures of putting native plants in where blight once was could bring back lizards, butterflies, birds, etc. And that even those small gestures really have a big impact on quality of life in the urban environment.
Did you meet many bits of resistance as you carried through these plans, or was it just rote dealing with agencies? How was it done?
It's a fantastically exciting amount of red tape. Very complex. I call it the crazy quilt. There's so many different overlapping jurisdictions from federal, Army Corps, county, state, local, school district. It's really an incredible patchwork of agencies. So one of the funnest things about this has been to find partners in various agencies, everyone from Bureau of Sanitation to the school districts, and find out how everyone has something to contribute to this bigger vision.
And you've arranged for us to meet some of these.
Yes. Fantastic folks doing their job and then some to try to create these transformations that we need so urgently in our infrastructure to get it green, green from gray.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting these people, and we'll be talking to you again. I thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
So, the Amigos de los Rios group found several good candidates on which to build their Emerald Necklace Park system. We can't cover all of them in the short time we have here, but we'll take a look at the beginning of 4 of their sites. The largest is the Peck Road site. It's located along the Rio Hondo River and would come under the heading of devastated land. The beauty of this site is that it had a water holding basin. The basin and all the land made it a perfect set-piece emerald necklace candidate. As you can see with these 9 and 10-year-old photos, they really started with bare bones. In the case of this piece of land, they worked with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works Flood Control District. All of the parks are different, but to me, the Peck Road Park incorporates all of the features of the Emerald Necklace vision, from the basin pond, more like a small lake if you ask me, to its size. Now here are some before shots of the Rio Vista Park. Rio Vista didn't start from scratch like the other ones. It was just a neglected, run-down park that was rehabilitated by Amigos along similar lines to the other sites. Sometimes the various city, county, state, and federal authorities didn't know themselves if they controlled part or all of the vacant, unused pieces of land. The jurisdictional part of all this goes something like, what entity controls or owns what property? Is it a state, local, or federal agency? This seems to be one of the recurring themes in the development of the land into Emerald Necklace Parks. Lashbrook was another of the parks, and it was the first to be finished. The Lashbrook site is a narrow strip of land or corridor that sits between the Rio Hondo River and houses. This is what they started with. Some of these sites had issues of security. Security issues being, what law enforcement agency covers this particular site? Does it belong to this city or that? Or is it county? Added to that were flood control and drainage issues. Just thinking about the multi-jurisdictions that the Amigos de los Rios group works with makes me dizzy. Then there's the Gibson Mariposa Park. The local school children were asked what kind of a park they wanted, and they unanimously voted for a park that butterflies would come to. You decide, is this a place where you'd create a park that butterflies would come to? Amigos did, and it worked. I've heard that the various agencies that Amigos works with were quite surprised by the speed with which the projects got approved and plans put into action. But Amigos isn't encumbered by all the responsibilities that our local, state, and federal agencies are. They have to protect us from flooding. They have to protect the air quality, all the while allowing business to flourish. I've never considered this, but there are millions of people in this part of Southern California. These are overwhelming and constant responsibilities. There's a great deal of stress on these public servants, and yet some key individuals made the extra time to help the Emerald Necklace become a reality. Something I wanted to do was to get a flavor of how one of these government agencies felt about the Emerald Necklace. I got the opportunity to speak with Teresa Villegas. This is Teresa Villegas, Deputy for Parks. You work for Supervisor Gloria Molina, I believe.
That is correct, yes.
Now, what is the feeling in your offices as far as the Emerald Necklace is concerned? What do you think the value of it is to your district and to Southern California in general?
Well, we value the development of the Emerald Necklace a lot, and it's a big treasure and a jewel for Supervisor Molina, and she has tasked me with being part of a large team to do the implementation of the Emerald Necklace. As you've heard in the past, it's about a 16 to 17 mile loop around the San Gabriel and Rio Hondo River, and we're tasked with doing a lot of greening around those two rivers, meaning either trails, parks, various bike paths and stops, and that is a significant amount of work to be able to do and have a continuous trail.
Now, specifically, what kinds of things have you done when you've been working with Rios de los Amigos?
We have been doing a lot of work along the greening of the Emerald Necklace, meaning a lot of park development, pocket parks, what we call, and also small parks that are used for either cyclists or joggers that use the bike path. With various amenities, either like benches or areas for drinking fountains, things of that nature. Normally what you would have seen in the past is just a bike path with either gray or nothing on the side, just dirt. And Amigos de los Rios has been a big advocate in the San Gabriel Valley, and one of very few nonprofits that is doing a lot of work along the San Gabriel River and Rio Hondo. So they have a strong vision for the Emerald Necklace and identify several pocket parks and stops throughout the area and work with the various government entities to be able to get permits and such. Our office supplies all of that, like red tape and such, that is associated with government entities, and we provide assistance with that effort.
Well, thank you very, very much. It was very nice to see you again, and I'm very excited. Claire has told me how much your office, Gloria Molina herself, and you have helped in the development of the Emerald Necklace.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Emerald Necklace sites are located south from Azusa Canyon and west of the 605 freeway. Part of the inspiration of the Emerald Necklace is the restoration of native plants. That's what got me interested. And since the San Gabriel Mountains form the roof or neck of the Emerald Necklace, I thought it would be fun to make a brief visit to the mountains and look at a few of the flowering plants. Now this plant's a member of the figwort family. Its common name is Shoei penstemon. It produces a beautiful flower. In fact, the spectabilis part of the botanical name means spectacular. I found these plants in many coastal sage and chaparral habitats below 3,000 feet of elevation. The stalks are woody, and these fellows can grow up to 4 feet in height. I tried growing of Shoei penstemon we purchased at a nursery years ago. Due to a combination of circumstances dominated overall by my own ignorance, I didn't have much success. Someday, I'm going to try it again. They bloom in April and May generally, but I found them flowering even in June. Now here's a chaparral yucca, also known as our Lord's candle. These are stately looking things as they stand tall here in the mountains. Native Americans used the seeds to make flowers. They also made baskets and nuts from the leaves. They ate the flower stalks and made a kind of soap from the roots. You can find these plants at all sorts of elevations here in the wild gardens of Southern California. They're a member, believe it or not, of the lily family. There are many species of Indian paintbrush in the wild gardens of California. This local fellow is called Martin's paintbrush. It's my favorite paintbrush. I bet you can't guess why. Anyway, unfortunately, it's not named after me. The things you see resembling red petals on this plant aren't petals at all. They're bracts, which are leaf-like structures. The Indian paintbrush plants can be found from coastal sage chaparral forest to 9,000 feet of elevation in the wild gardens of California. You can't miss the hairy ceanothus if you catch one in bloom. The blue color is striking as the shrub flowers on a hillside or in a canyon. They're generally found below 5,000 feet of elevation, but I found them higher at Palomar Mountain. Hummingbirds visit this shrub, and quail eat the fruit. When I'm driving in the Azusa Canyon during the spring, I am always distracted by the brilliant pink flowers clinging to the bank along the roads. I found these flowers in virtually all of Southern California's montane and chaparral regions. Their common name is prickly phlox. They're a member of the phlox family, their namesake. They bloom rather early, depending upon elevation and seasonal rain, of course. They form these beautiful pink bouquets wherever they grow, and they're one of the prettiest flowers in the wild gardens. One plant you can find in many of Southern California's mountains is the western wallflower. The pretty yellow clusters on these long stems are a common sight all over these mountains. These plants have an impressive range. They grow all over the California mountains and eastward into the central U.S. The nectar produced by the western wallflower is attractive to several kinds of butterflies. They're a member of the mustard family. You know, it's easy to overlook this member of the sunflower family. Most of the time, when we see them, they're dried up and brown or white. But look at this fresh beauty with its lovely color. The common name for this one is California thistle. When you get up close like this, the tubular flowers make it look like a sea anemone. The new shoots of this plant were eaten by Native Americans. This is one of my favorite flowering plants. I always enjoy finding these, and I find them often. They're called virgin's bower or clematis. They're a vine and wind their way around trees and shrubs. The early Spanish settlers used this plant to clean wounds on goats, calling it yerba de chalato, herb of the kid or baby goat. I find it often in coastal sage chaparral settings, and the habitat here in the Azusa Canyon would fit that description. The flower of this plant is beautiful. It's a member of the buttercup family. All you have to do is take a walk in the hills to find a sticky-leafed monkey flower. These plants are common all over the wild gardens of Southern California. The flowers and the stems, in fact most of the plant, has this sticky substance on it. It reminds me of sticky Velcro. It is not pleasant to touch. There's a wide range of colors in this species, going from yellow to orange to red and even a dark maroon. You can find these plants all over the wild gardens of California up to 2,000 or 3,000 feet of elevation, maybe even a little higher. Back down the mountain, I began to think of the formation of the emerald necklace and the titanic task of creating it. You know, it's no small feat to reconnect tiny parts of these waterways and their environs back to some semblance of their histories. Of course, there's no way to completely recreate the past here or anywhere else for that matter, but that was never the intent of the Amigos group. Just turning the unused places into parks and planting wild gardens fills me with admiration. Well, we've looked at the unlikely beginnings of the parks with the aid of these archival photos. But the real accomplishment here is not building the parks. The parks are just land and physical objects to move around. No, it's the exciting amount of red tape that Claire talked about. Just who controlled the land was an issue. Anyway, you've seen the beginnings, ladies and gentlemen. Now I have an advantage. I know what these parks look like now. Next time, that advantage is going to disappear because we're going to pay one more visit to the Emerald Necklace. We'll not only see the parks as they are today, we'll also pay a visit to a surprise wild garden. See you next time for another visit to the Emerald Necklace. May the wildflowers bloom till the turning of the earth ceases to be. I'm your host, Martin Hale. Until then, so long.